Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Hello, podsters or podroonies, if you prefer. Thank you for joining us again for 2025, our first episode of the year. We are actually recording this in December of last year, but yeah, this is the first one of the new year, people. And as Nosferatu hit cinemas over Christmas, New Year's Day for us in the UK, we are talking Vampire Films 2, the sequel. We have done a Vampire Films episode in the past, way back when, on Thirst and racking my brain, Let the Right One In, I believe. And we have talked many vampire films since then in different categories, and we talked about Blade earlier this year, which was a lot of fun, so do check that one out as well. I think that was R-rated comic book films 2, I believe, with Lee from Lights Camera Rant. Do check those podcasts out if you love your vampire movies. And I have first time guests on the show for this year, which is very exciting. Jen and Sarah from the Movies and Us podcast. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're doing great. Better now that we're going to talk about some vampire movies together. Thank you for having us on the pod. Really exciting and really great premise for podcasting, pitting some films against each other within a theme as you look ahead to a new release. So really cool.
Excellent. So guys, tell us about your podcast and where can we find you?
Yeah, we are Movies and Us, and our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the way that stories help us connect with each other and the world around us. And so you can find us wherever you get your podcast. Just search for Movies and Us, and then you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, at Movies and Us Pod.
Excellent stuff. So guys, Nosferatu, are we excited for this one? We've seen the trailer. I know I am very excited for this one. We've already covered 2 Robert Eggers films on the show last year. In 2024, The Lighthouse came second on our list, just pipped to the post by Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, that topped the table in our very last show. And we also did The Witch, which was severely undermarked, in my opinion, from my other guests, from Elle and Chris from Spoil My Movie. I love those guys, but yeah, they weren't huge fans of that, but I am. So are you guys excited for Nosferatu, and do you like, Robert Eggers' previous work?
Yes, I think we are both pretty big Robert Eggers fans, so very excited to see his take on Nosferatu in general and seeing where he chooses to focus on. He's such an image maker, so I think that it'll be really fascinating to see what he does with some of this iconic imagery, this concept that is very well known, but what's his 2024 modern take on it, and what does that say about the fears we have in society now, the themes that are important to us now. I think it'll be fascinating. He's such a visionary. And so I love that they've given him the money, budget, and permission to do this one. So I think this will be really fascinating to see. And yeah, I was just listening to your episode covering The Witch, and it was funny hearing you just advocate for it the best that you could. That was great.
Awesome. Sarah, are you excited for Nosferatu?
Yeah, I'm pumped. I loved The Lighthouse. I have loved quite a few of Robert Eggers' movies, so I'm pumped to see what this is. And we just reviewed the 1922 Nosferatu on our podcast, and so it's going to be really fascinating to see, like Jen was saying, what does this story look like in 2024, and what themes are kind of pulled out, and what does he how does he take these images in this really interesting story and tie it back to our modern lives. So I think there's going to be a lot of fun and interesting things that will hopefully be communicated through that film.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it, and Robert Eggers always does an immense amount of research for the time periods he's looking at for all his films, and this one is no different. And I know technically it's a remake, but there's a lot of lore and myth behind a lot of this stuff, and he really delves deep into it. So it'd just be really interesting to see how he brings a lot of that onto the screen. Yeah, I mean, I've seen the trailer. It looks terrifying, to be honest. I'm like, yay, thumbs up for me. All his films have great rich texture to them. I loved watching The Lighthouse, just so textural. You feel I felt wet at the end of that film. It's just so kind of in a non-weird way. Yeah, just very, I felt soaked, So hopefully, in Nosferatu, it should bring the fear factor ramped up to 11. And yeah, just very excited for it. Extremely gothic, which is certainly right at my wheelhouse. Very, very excited for this one.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I'm fascinated by the Christmas Day release choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm intrigued to see how that, the box office, what the engagement with this film looks like. Because I think that he is well known enough amongst the masses to draw in a certain crowd. But I think also this being a vampire horror movie is going to draw in the other parts of the crowd. So I think that would be fascinating to see. Just imagine going to the movies with grandma, during Christmas.
Yeah. Well, you got some pretty decent stars, I think, in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Lily Rose Depp, Johnny Depp's daughter.
Yeah.
So that's going to pull in some crowds, I think. Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu. Oh, and you got William Dafoe as well, who's always amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a bad performance from him.
You can't do a Nosferatu with Robert Eggers without Willem Dafoe in it.
Yeah. It would seem madness, people.
Yeah.
without that face. So, should we go with your pick first, guys?
Sure.
What did you go for vampire films?
Yeah, so our pick for a vampire film is What We Do in the Shadows. This is really kind of unique concept that I thought would be really fun for us to be able to talk about. I've watched quite a few Taika films and are pretty mixed in our feelings about him. So I thought it would be also fun to just see what all of our thoughts are about this film. And I think the style of humor is very much what Taika brings to his movies. And so I think that is going to be really fun to be able to talk about. And they play with a lot of vampire-esque concepts in kind of a very fun and silly way. And so just getting to talk through some of those themes around these tropes related to vampires and how it shows up in a very quirky way in this movie. I thought that would be really fun. So yeah, this was our pick.
Awesome. Were there any other films in contention for you guys?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Blade because Blade rocks.
Sorry about
that. And but that was already covered. So this was this was the runner-up, and it was a good choice. So this is going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, Blade is awesome. Just some great action, and I can't imagine anyone else in the role. Poor Mahershala. So initial reactions to What We Do in the Shadows. Then, Sarah, what did you make of this? The first time you watched it?
Yeah. So when Jen said that we are mixed on Taika, I am the reason why we are mixed on him, because he's very hit or miss for me. Sometimes I think he's hilarious, and then other times I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm over this. But this movie worked for me. It did hit a point about an hour in where I was like, okay, I'm done. But I was entertained enough to enjoy myself. It's a good experience. And I really love the mockumentary format. And I feel like this movie utilizes that really, really well to bring something new to this vampire genre.
Yeah, I'm a big Taika Waititi fan as well. Next Goal Wins was his latest one. Not amazing, really, I don't think, for me, that one. You could tell a little bit that there's been a bit of, I don't know for sure, but you got the sense that there was studio interference and lots of scenes cut around. And when that came out. Like they had filmed it literally years ago, 2 or 3 years ago before it even came out. So I don't really know what happened there, which is a shame. But other than that, I love Hunt for the Wilder People. Absolutely love that one.
Me too.
Yeah.
They got me hooked.
Yeah. But yeah, with this one, I'd not actually seen this one before. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. I was literally belly laughing at some of the stuff that happens in this. So it's just hilarious. It's interesting as well. Taika Waititi has recently come out and said that I think the TV show has gone on too long for such a simple idea, which is kind of an interesting thing that he said. Because obviously I don't think he's in the TV show much at all. I'm not sure, but I don't watch it. I definitely want to see it after seeing this film. Yeah, so I really loved this, to be honest. Really hilarious. What did you make of this one then? Initial reactions, Jen?
Yeah, I love this movie. I watched it a couple of years ago with a group of friends, which I think is like the best way to watch this movie.
Oh, yeah.
If you can, because everyone's just being so silly. It's such a mood setter. And I think I appreciate this movie more even on the second watch. Mostly thinking about like the way that this movie was created, I think will be really interesting when we get to some of these categories, because I got to read a little bit more about it, and they really improv'd so much of it and had like hundreds of hours of footage that then they cut together, which I think is just such an interesting concept. And I think it really shows up in the way that this film feels. Like it feels like this group of friends that is just goofing off together and being silly. And that like charm, I think, is really captured in this film. So a lot of the bits feel really off the cuff, which I think adds to this movie feeling really raw and fresh and exciting instead of kind of structured and written and paced with the comedy. And so the rapport and chemistry between this group, I think, is really felt and makes this really great. I haven't watched the TV show, so I'm really intrigued how that translates into the show. If there's a little bit more that's like calculated and structured around that. But I think the unstructured nature of this is really, really fascinating. I think makes this feel like such a gem of a film compared to some other comedy mockumentary types of filmmaking that feel maybe a little bit more planned. And I love kind of the spontaneous nature of this movie. So that charm really translates to the big screen.
Awesome. So what happens in What We Do in the Shadows?
Yeah, I would say if we had to boil it down, it's roommates being roommates. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Friends being friends. Yeah. If we had to, double click a little bit more, there's a group of four flatmates.
4. Don't forget Peter.
I can't forget Peter. That are, have these different vignettes of them, doing life together at the beginning. And then there's folks that are added to their crew, being intentionally kind of big. Folks that are added to their crew, they go out and have some adventures. There's other undead sections of the community that they stumble upon and have some interactions with, and makes for some really great fun. So they mostly spend a lot of their time in their flat and then soon expand out into the world and encounter some other folks. So yeah, friends being friends, roommates being roommates.
So directing then, like the film obviously has this kind of documentary style. The direction on the whole is like very basic, and you have a lot of like wide shots, which you would expect from like a documentary, but also a comedy as well. And it kind of perfectly shows off the actors' like physical comedy. And I liked how they use like a lot of like visual comedy in this. And I loved the little scene where they're like getting ready to go out, and because they can't see their reflections in the mirror, they don't know what they look like. So you see these like terrible cartoon drawings of themselves. Tiger just plays with like a cup in the mirror. Pretty random, but I love that. They get this like clothes stand out to help them see what they look like. And then I love the little montage of them in this hallway, and it's cut like together really fast, showing off all the different costumes they're wearing. And they're also just like relying on each other's opinions with comedy in the dialogue as well. So it's got like great pace to it, and most of the comedy is visual in this scene, which I loved. So that particular scene I thought was just a great all-round scene, just from a filmmaking sense, not just like dialogue humor. Yeah, great stuff for me in that.
I love that whole bit too. Like it's so funny. And then I love how it ends too, because they're like walking down the hallway in their clothes. They're ready to go out for a night. And then it's like hard cut to them sitting on public transportation to go for their night out. And so I love those quick cuts and those quick like scene changes that go to somewhere kind of unexpected. I think that's another fun layer of the humor in addition to all the physical humor that we see.
Yeah, you feel like they're still quite self-conscious about what they're wearing. So they're like, guys, let's sit at the back of the bus.
Yes.
Come on.
Well, and that's one of the things that I love about this film is how much it captures like real dynamics that you have with your group of friends and just like plays it into, obviously the dynamics of vampires, but that feeling of like you're getting ready with your friends for a night out and you've got all this like hope and excitement and you think that it's going to be a glamorous night, and like and the reality is like you got to figure out how to get there, what time, getting everybody together, you know what I mean, like the real life kicks in when you like are on the bus in the back of
relatable.
It's so relatable. And so there's so many sequences that are like that. One of my favorite bits in this movie is Stu introducing technology into their home.
Oh yeah.
So great. They just like play into like, I mean, we have like older generations in our life that like are trying to figure out technology, and you see them like lean into that as vampires being very disconnected from the outside world, and Stu like teaching them how to do things.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah, that's great, that scene. One of the scenes I really liked as well is there's a great sequence where, like in another vampire or horror film, it would feel very scary and it would feel like a pure like horror sequence. And it's where like Stephanie, I think Deacon's servant, brings this couple around to the vampires so they can eat them, basically. And it starts off hilariously when like Deacon tricks the man Nick to think his penis looks like a cobra, which had me in stitches. So then he obviously decides to try and get out of there. And then you have this like quite fast paced, like close in shot, almost chase sequence where a lot of the vampires pop up and in like another film, like the semi jump scares would feel fairly scary, but because like the whole situation has been set up as being hilarious. So tonally, this type of like sequence was sort of flipped on its head. Like there's like a brilliant bit where like Deacon comes out of the guy's backpack, which is very funny to me. What's interesting though, like when you think the sequence is like winding down and Nick is like running away outside, like the pace kind of slows down a little bit, and then all of a sudden Peter, the Nosferatu vampire, like jumps out of nowhere, which for me is kind of borderline of being funny and scary at the same time, like depending on how into the film you are, I guess, and how casually you're watching it, would determine whether it's really funny or scary. It's just a really interesting bit of rhythm in the filmmaking. For me, I still found it kind of funny, but I think, for some people, that could be quite scary as well. So really great scene for me.
And I love that denouement, that the end of that sequence with Nosferatu coming out, because it's playing on that idea of like, this is what we would have expected. And it's such a misdirect for us to not get that for that whole sequence and then hit us with it at the end. It's kind of it's a genius way of playing with the concepts that we thought we expected, we didn't get. We thought we're in the clear, we're good, it's funny, we're having a good time. And then hitting us with that is really fun. It's kind of this like final punchline of the movie of like, oh no, we know vampire movies. Don't get it twisted, We know what we're doing.
Yeah, there are scary bits. Don't worry.
Yeah. Gotta keep you on your toes.
There are scary bits, and there are also a lot of gory bits at times in this film, which quite surprised me. Like, you don't expect it, given that it's a comedy, but they still managed to make like the gory stuff funny and not disturbing and disgusting. Well, for me anyway. When like Tyker drinks the blood of one of his victims, like he nicks the artery, as he says, in her neck, and the blood kind of goes everywhere, and like Tyker is basically drinking the blood like it's a chocolate fountain. And when Nick, like a newly turned vampire, gets frustrated that he can't like turn chips into worms for Stu, the human character, in frustration he kind of like eats one of the chips. Then like cut to him spewing blood like a fire hydrant. That was hilarious. So I liked the fact that they don't skimp on like the really gory stuff as well, that this is actually a horror genre. There's blood, people, lots of blood too.
And I really loved that scene with Taika trying to suck that woman's blood, because it's playing on, I feel like vampire movies usually are either like horror or this like really like play up like the romance sensuality piece of it, or sometimes it's both. And I feel like that scene in particular starts out like, oh my gosh, they're on a date. We know what these like sexy vampire movies are like, oh my goodness, this is where this is going. And then he nicks the artery and then his blood spurting everywhere. So it's playing on these two versions of vampire movies and doing it in a way that's really funny and over the top.
And I love how long the camera lingers on Taika in his interview after that sequence, you know? That's the kind of like intuition in the like filmmaking and maybe it's a lot of the cameramen of knowing when and who to focus on and for how long and like letting that breathe. I thought like that lasts long enough, and they really allowed for us to just sit with him awkwardly as he's like covered in blood with this really funny expression on his face. So I thought that was great too.
Yeah, it's really great with the timing of just creating that awkwardness and keeping the camera fairly far away from them. Yeah. So you can just have that just awkward stillness from the actors as well.
So good.
Favorite scene for me, I think I've got to go with that last werewolf attack. I thought that was just genius. I mean, it was quite hard to figure out what my favorite scene was because I loved a lot of them, but I think ultimately I went for this one. And throughout a lot of the film, you sometimes forget that the cameramen filming the vampires are actual characters, even though they don't say anything. Like sometimes the vampires like point them out, but not very often. So I love the kind of the chaotic nature of this scene where half the time you don't know what's going on. And you get like flashes of vampires and werewolves everywhere attacking each other. But I absolutely love the scene where a cameraman gets like caught by one of the werewolves, drops his camera, he gets dragged out and gets mauled. And you get this like glitching effect on the camera shot. And and then he kind of drops back into the camera on the ground in the camera shot. That was brilliant. Then like the other cameraman, it feels like he's hiding as we see like a very long and wide shot of like the werewolves trying to attack the vampires that are kind of hovering in the air. So funny. I just love that. So good.
I love how dark that sequence is, visually dark. I guess thematically kind of dark too, but nothing in this movie is that dark, but I just love how like visually pitch black. So maybe that's that those bits are in that final werewolf fight, because you just don't know what's going to emerge out of the darkness on screen, and it really feels like there's just some crude dudes out there just with their cameras filming the best they can. They don't have a lighting crew. They don't have great production. This feels a really raw footage that we're getting.
Yeah. It was very real. Sarah, have you got a favorite scene or shot for you?
I really loved the opening. I thought that it was such a great way to kind of, for me, it almost seemed like we were watching an episode of reality TV, as opposed, like even further than just a mockumentary. Like it's like the real world, but vampires. And I loved that opening because you learn so much about the characters, but I love that it's just in service of the chore wheel and nobody is doing their chores. And so I thought that was such for the story, important to introduce us, but also just utterly hilarious seeing everybody in their own personalities and what they're doing. And like we said, it's just roommates being roommates.
Yeah, I mean, not doing the dishes for 5 years, that's not cool. Absolutely not.
It's going to pile up, and then you'll get some passive-aggressive notes of, please wash me.
I love the shots of the notes. And there's like 4 arrows pointing to
Yeah.
So good.
Look at all this blood. Come on.
Yeah. So good.
I have to eat off this plate.
Yes.
Jen, have you got a favorite scene or shot for you?
I think that the whole sequence of Stu introducing technology that I mentioned earlier is probably my favorite. But I did want to shout out another sequence that I thought, again, takes real world dynamics and like nails it, which is Jackie wanting to become a vampire and almost this like corporate America dynamic. You said you were going to give me this promo, and I feel like I'm working really hard for it, and you still haven't given it to me yet with Deacon. So I thought that whole bit was so great that they captured of her just being like, what else do I mean? I've already done everything. Like, I've been waiting.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. So
but he didn't have a dentist though. So
yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
You know,
directing score for me then. Ooh, I loved it. So I will go pretty high, I think. I just love kind of the simplicity of it as well, and how they kind of really incorporate this documentary style, that it feels very real, and the people behind it are real people as well, behind the camera. Yeah, just so well observed. So yeah, 8.8, I think, for me. Movies and Us. What's your score for directing for What We Do in the Shadows?
I can go first, and maybe Sarah, you can share yours, and we can take the average.
Yeah. Because
the math can be mathing. Yeah, I would give this a 9. I think that there's a lot conceptually that lands really well, and it's a really creative premise to begin with, but the execution, I think, is what makes this really work. And seeing this resonate with so many people, I think, is also a testament to humor's hard to do these days. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Because everyone has such specific styles of humor now, and I think there's so many different types in this film that there's something for everyone. Visually, there's a lot of bits, but also like conceptually, and the way that they play with a lot of the concepts, I think, is really fun too. So yeah, on the whole, I would say execution really well done. The set design's really great, which we didn't talk about yet.
Oh yeah.
This flat. And the way they play with the things and the props in the home is really great. So yeah, editing, hard task to do, just cut this thing together. That many hours of footage. So on the whole, I would say execution 9. How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, mine was an 8. So 8.5. I didn't bring you down too far, Jen.
No, good. I knew it was going to be lower than mine, but well done.
8.5. Okay. Yeah. Right. Screenplay then. So I really liked how, like, your 3 main vampires in this, like Deacon, Vladislav, and Vigo, have their kind of their own storylines going on. Like Taika Waititi's character's story, Vigo, I would say probably has the weakest of the 3, where he kind of he says he traveled to New Zealand for a girl he loved, but his servant Philip put the wrong postage on his coffin, so it was too late, and the girl married someone else, the poor guy. Then in the end, like, she finds someone else, but I think his role in the film is more like guiding the audience through this world, their world, and he's the one that kind of talks to the camera the most about what's going on with kind of the other characters. So yeah, he was great overall, but yeah, I think Deacon and Vladislav have more interesting stories as they go through their lives in this film.
I thought that the most engaging parts of this film are when they're just interacting with each other. I actually wish that those backstory bits were a little bit more fleshed out or a little bit funnier. I didn't find those as engaging for me too. And I think they could have been richer or played into the way that the characters are making decisions in the present, that they all are really fun to like tie back into something. So we got a little bit of that with the Beast and that whole backstory and kind of reveal of it being an ex. I thought it was really fun. But on the whole, I'm like, I think that the best parts are where it doesn't even matter what their backstories were. So they're just these like big personalities colliding with each other in these vignettes. I thought were stronger than all of the I think visually some of the backstory is really fun to see how they like almost scrapbooky cut together all these like different visual styles to showcase that. But conceptually, I found them less interesting as well. And I think they could have done more with it.
Yeah, this is one of those movies where you just want to hang out with these guys. Yeah. They're so silly. So you're just hanging out with them in their flat while they're doing whatever they're doing, because it's going to be wild and silly and fun to watch. So I appreciated some of the setup. So I loved that Vlad refers to himself as Vlad the Poker instead of Vlad the Impaler. And so I liked those little jokes that they included. I thought those were really funny, but the heart and soul of this film is these dudes just hanging out. And that's when when the magic really happens in this film.
Yeah, very much like a vampire hangout movie. It's basically what you need to put on the poster quote, I guess. But yeah, I think like Deacon's story is I would say pretty funny, where like he turns Nick into a vampire. This new vampire was great, and probably kind of the best storyline out of the three, I would say, because it was the one where like it kind of highlights how separate they are from the modern world, and like where Stu comes in as Nick's friend, and where he can't bring himself to kill humans and kill him as he's his best mate. But Stu introduces them to modern technology, as you said, Jen, and you have like a lot of fun with that. But with like Nick's character as like a new vampire, I love how at the start he loves being a vampire with all the flying and stuff and so on, but then ends up hating being a vampire, and he's like, being a vampire is just way overhyped. That was a great line. Like he misses daytime TV and he can't eat chips, which is obviously a big turn off for being a vampire. And then like the others at first are quite proud of turning Nick into a vampire. They've got like a new friend they can just hang out with. But then like when Nick starts telling everyone he's a vampire, poor Peter gets killed in a sunlight accident when a vampire hunter tries to kill him. And then obviously Deacon starts to hate him in a quite hilarious flying fight sequence. And then you have the policemen come and they're hypnotized, and just a great concept for a scene where, was it Taika hypnotizes them and says, you won't see anything unusual. And the policeman was like, oh, this guy isn't comfortable at all. He's got a big slab on top of him. That's not good. Just so blasé. But I mean, no fire detectors. That's not good at all. That's the main issue for them. So just great how they play with that. It's just great seeing this contrast of seeing very old vampires interact with like new vampires from the modern world. Great stuff.
Well, it's the typical like clique thing of like, you have your group and they're the cool kids, and then the new kid comes and starts to disrupt everything. And that's just what we're seeing with vampires who are hundreds of years old. And all of those are so funny. And then when Nick leaves, but they still want to keep Stu, is also just utterly hilarious. That everybody loves Stu and they hate Nick. It's all of those dynamics between them are also interesting and funny.
Yeah, it's almost like a teen movie.
It is
when Nick comes into play. High school movie.
Yeah,
like Mean Girls or something. Like the Beast tease from Vladislav, Jermaine Clement's character, is great. I thought, where they use like a lot of these old drawings of the Beast where there's like a penis drawn right in the middle of this creature's body. So I was like, I hope we never see this Beast. No, thank you. So when they get invited to like the unholy masquerade ball, like full of vampires, zombies, and other demons, like the guest of honor turns out to be the Beast, and you're like, what's this piece going to look like, and it turns out to be Vladislav's girlfriend. And I love how he's like kind of self-neglected himself and stopped feeding, and he turns all grey. I thought that was just a great visual gag there. So near the end, I liked how like both Vladislav's storyline and Deacon's storyline kind of come together, where like they protect Stu, a human, from being eaten from the Beast, and her current vampire boyfriend, who is also kind of grey, which is weird. So very kind of simple stuff, but effective and hilarious in the end. The fact that they just really want to protect this human, whereas at the start they would be like, yes, food, please.
It's so good. This whole Stu bit, I ate it up. Like, I think it comes at the right timing in the film, like pacing wise. And then I think it easily could have gotten really stale if they continued to just lean into the same, like, oh my god, it's stupid, but they continue to play with it and like increase the stakes. So they bring Stu to like an undead community event, and that increases the possibilities of danger, and so they have to go farther to protect him. I thought like they that could have easily just been like an overdone joke of like Stu's always in the corner, but I thought they really continued to lean into it while still stepping up the stakes of it really well.
I mean, there are points in the Unholy Masquerade Ball where I was kind of feeling worried for Stu. I was like, people are really kind of sniffing at you, and the zombie is like, are you predeceased? And you're like, Stu, get out of there, man. This is not going well.
And I love that moment when they're there and they've all realized that Stu is human and they all want to like eat him, whatever. And the explanation of why Stu isn't a threat to everybody is he's wearing a bow tie. That is so brilliant. It's so good. So I'd love, even though it's this really tense moment and we're all worried about Stu and like, Stu, you got to get out of there, my guy. Like they're going to eat you. And they're still popping jokes left and right, but it doesn't feel out of place. It feels perfectly normal for these characters to be communicating in this really silly way in this really tense moment.
And I love the part where the beast is like, he's like in the center of the circle and the beast is like, are you a demon? He goes, I'm a software analyst.
Just work with computers, that's it.
Stu, the EQ on Stu is not it. It's not there.
No.
It's part of the charm.
Funny lines, interesting lines, people. There are plenty. Near the start, when Taika is like waking everyone up and he's like, how was your night last night? I transformed into a dog and had sex. That was very random. I love Deacon in this. He's just a random like interview scene, and he says, "When you become a vampire, you become very sexy." Which is like he feels like it's an automatic thing for him, which is funny. You guys got any?
Oh my gosh, I've got a long list. I'll pick a couple. I love the bit when they're getting ready and Deacon goes, "We are the bait, but we are also the trap." He's like trying on his outfits.
Oh, yeah.
Iago with his date. He's like, I like to make a real evening of it. Play some nice music, maybe give him some nice wine. It's their last moment alive, so why not make it a nice experience?
Yeah, I love the line when he's killed that girl and he comes into the hallway and says, well, it didn't go so great. I hit the main artery, so yeah, it's a real mess in there. On the upside, I think she had a really good time. That was great.
So good. One of the bits that is like kind of, I didn't notice the first time, and Vlad says it like really under his breath, and the scene's basically over. It's after the procession of shame that they do. And you just hear Vlad go, that was a shame.
Yeah.
And it's so small and in there, but I loved it. I ate it up.
Yeah, because in that moment, it did feel a little bit disappointing that they're just pointing and saying shame a little bit. It was funny, but yeah, that makes that scene.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When he says that, it's a shame. So good. I love kind of the werewolves mantra. We're werewolves, not swearwolves.
Yeah.
That one took me out. That was probably my favorite line, is the not swearwolves. And the fact that it comes up multiple times and then the other werewolves use it against the leader.
So important to them.
It's so good.
I love the little bit when Stu is introducing them to the internet on his computer, and Taika's like, I lost a really nice silk scarf in about 1912. Now Google it. That's not how Google works.
It's so good. I love the bit where they're showing them watching the sunrise on YouTube.
Yes. Oh, beautiful.
Very nice.
One brilliant one, almost my favorite line, but not quite. Yeah, I think it's Vlad and Deacon, and I think when Vlad is talking about when he had a fight with the Beast, and he says, one time I battled the Beast in the toilets of a nightclub, and then Deacon says, difficult battle.
Yeah.
It just gets my imagination racing with that. It's just, it's a great simple line that difficult battle. But I think my favorite has to be, I mean, on another day, it might be a different one, but I went for this one because there's so many great ones. From Vlad when during the cops when the cops are in their house and Deacon asks, wait, let's kill them. And then Vlad says, no, let's just wait and see what other health and safety points they have, and maybe we'll kill them later.
Yeah.
I thought that was just genius. So, screenplay score for me, I think it's really impressive. I love how they play with a lot of like vampire lore in just such a hilarious way, so well observed, and just honestly like laugh out loud funny at times. It really is. Yeah, just a great kind of concept. The fact that it's a mockumentary, and sort of same kind of opinion with directing. I think it kind of goes into screenplay as well. The fact that it feels kind of very real and grounded, and yet they're putting themselves in very like real situations that we would relate to in our lives. So yeah, you can describe it as like a vampire hangout film, teen movie, you know, but it just happens to be a documentary. So yeah, I'll go like a straight 9 for me. Yeah, it's really fun. How about you guys?
Love it. Sarah, what is yours?
Yeah, I think that this is solid. So I gave it a 7.5. It's fun, contains a lot of really great things. It's a fun watch.
Nice. Okay, and I gave it an 8.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's right there behind directing for me. Mostly the bits that I talked about earlier around the backstory. They just spent a lot of time on that, and I think there's like a little bit that could have been a little bit stronger.
Okay.
If that was they nailed that, this would be solid 9 for me. Yeah, but everything else.
So what are we saying as a group score? 7.8.
Yep, 7.8. Okay.
Nice. I think for me, it's just this is very much my bag in terms of humor.
Yeah.
Just really great. I mean, there are times where I'm like, I have to pause because I'm laughing too much. I don't want to miss anything. So acting then, I thought Taika Waititi is fantastic in this film. Like, he's always kind of brilliant in all his films he acts in. I know certainly when he directs his films later in his career, he only really has cameos. But I especially liked his physical performance here. Like, there's a great little bit where Jermaine Clement as Vladislav is firing a bow and arrow at a dartboard, and Taika's character is like holding the board up, and you can tell he's immediately like getting nervous and just kind of tries to move his body to the side a little bit so he doesn't get hit. But he gets hit anyway and crashes into the side. Just a little bit of physical comedy I thought was really great. And the physical comedy, I think in general with the acting, I thought was just really nailed on, brilliant. As I kind of said before, when the cops come in to investigate a disturbance and what is it? Deacon is like in midair and Vlad is like holding his legs. And the cops come in as if everything's normal. That whole kind of tableau of that, just brilliant to see. Yeah, and you can tell like Jermaine Clement and I can't remember the guy's name who plays Deacon, but they're just trying their best to just try and act normal in these kind of ridiculous positions. Great.
Yeah, my favorite performance is probably Taika. I think he's doing so much with his facial expressions that are his face and the look on his face in so many sequences is the joke. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it adds so much flavor to what's already a really funny moment, but just cut to him. And even the way he holds his body, like we were talking about the bit after he hits the main artery, you know, just the way his body looks awkward. It's just perfect. It's so well done, well executed. So he's probably my favorite. I think the actor that plays Stuart Rutherford, also like does exactly what he needs to do for that role. Yeah. Perfectly cast as well, but that's it's a less flashy style of humor, and I think he nails it, which is sometimes more challenging, and I think he does a good job. So those are my two favorites.
Yeah, I think he's kind of similar to Corey Gonzalez Macia, I think that's how you say his name, who plays Nick. They're very, quiet performances, and it kind of allows all the other like older vampires to shine a lot more, but they're still just as funny as well, just in a very different way. It's just great because you kind of have this two levels of fish out of water. You know, you've got them in a very odd world in the old vampire's house, and then when the old vampires are outside in the modern world, they have their own kind of fish out of water scenes. So it's just great how they kind of balance all those performances as a whole in this film. Just really great from both of them.
That's a really great way to describe it. Yeah, the two layers and tiers of them being fish out of water. And I think like the group dynamic works because they are playing that more reserved, less colorful, less flashy, but still just as funny. And to do an empty look and have that be really hilarious is hard to do, you know, and they nail it. So it allows for the space for those scenes to
I just love Stu when at the end when he comes back and like, hi guys, I'm back. I'm alive. I'm just a werewolf now. He's got these massive scars on his face, you know.
And he looks like a little bit proud too, but not too.
Yeah,
it's just,
it's so good because he needs to like stay in character. You can't be doing too much with that, even though he's so excited to be alive. You know, anyone else is like, yes, I'm alive. But no, it's so like, good. Hi guys, it's all good.
Yeah, I'm going to round it out by saying that Taika was also my favorite performance. I think for me, he has this like wit to him, and there's like a charm to him too, but he's also so painfully awkward at the same time. And so it's just this really funny mix, especially for a vampire, because vampires are like alluring and mysterious and all of this, and then you have this Taika version of a vampire who you do want to hang out with because he does seem fun, but at the same time he's going to be the dude who bothers you for not doing the chore wheel. And I loved that all of those things are combined in his performance. So I thought he did a really great job in this.
I love Taika, but I'm not going for Taika. I'm going to go for Johnny Bro. I think that's how you say it. Who plays Deacon. He just gives off this sense that he thinks he's a really cool vampire. He really isn't at all. I just find that really funny. Like, and he kind of wants to be the leader, and he thinks he's the leader, even though it is, you know, Taika or Jermaine Clement, I would say. But he's always kind of gives off this pathetic brashness about him, this ridiculous ego, and I just found that was hilarious. And that little dance he does, that erotic dance that he says, was just hilarious. And he just gets pissed off when Nick comes in. He's like, "You spoiled my erotic dance. What are you doing?" I just love how irritated he gets as well. That he thinks he's like this amazing vampire, and he really isn't. I just found that hilarious. So good. So acting score for me, I think it's again like really great, and you know, I think we forget as like movie watchers that sometimes that comedy's like really hard to get right, certainly from an acting point of view, because you are very exposed. Like the directing very much exposes you a lot to make it funny first and foremost, but you've really got to. But that's just the first point of call in making it funny with the directing. The acting has to be spot on to make it work. So, I'll still go pretty high. I'll go like 8.6 for me, because I found pretty much every character hilarious in this. How about you guys?
I am going pretty high.
Of course.
Yeah. Of course, because I love this. I'm like rose-colored glasses for all of my scores because I just love this movie so much.
Yeah.
And I think your point is great, which is why I also gave this pretty high score. I gave it a 9 because this doesn't work without them bringing it from an acting perspective. And I think, like, to your point, like comedy needs and rests so heavily on this that there's nothing else that can save this movie if the acting's not there. It actually would be like a painful viewing experience if the timing is not right, the visual detail, the way that they emote is not perfectly on point and nailing it. It's a little off sometimes. So I think that they nail it on the head in like nearly every scene. And then The other difficult part, I think, of this type of movie too, and especially with it, so much of it being improv, is the way that they allow their space for each of them to breathe. Like sometimes improv can be too overcrowded because everyone's like operating on all cylinders and kind of crowding out so that you can't appreciate some of the moments. But you see the way that they know like which scenes they take a little bit more of a back seat on because there's a bit that's happening and the other two need to shine. And then when they lean in and can really do their bit too. So the way that this is allowed to breathe, I think is like also testament to all of these actors and their understanding of timing and nuance. So I give it a 9.
Excellent. Sarah, do you agree with?
Yeah, I think that they do a great job in this, and their chemistry together is so fun. So I will give this, and I'm going to give it an 8.
Okay.
Make our math easy, 8.5 as our group score. But yeah, this is just a fun dynamic with all of them. And I love all of the different types of humor that each actor brings to keep things interesting, that it's not just one note the entire time. So, yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. So 8.5 for Jen and Sarah. Right, let's add up the scores then for What We Do in the Shadows.
I feel pleased with where our scores landed.
Yeah, I wasn't too much of a Debbie Downer, guys.
My scores are inflated knowing the average was going to happen between the two of us.
Well, and I made sure, I was like, okay, Sarah, you can't be like the most boring person. You can't be a grump. You have to have fun with this.
Right. What We Do in the Shadows gets a pretty impressive 51.2.
Wow.
Okay.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Pretty good. So I guess to put this in context, our top score of last year in 2024 for Lord of the Rings Return of the King got 57 points.
Oh, wow.
Out of 60. So, yeah.
I wonder if people listening are going to think that we're inflating this a little bit, but I don't care. I stand
It's
by
awesome.
my numbers, you know?
That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favourite films are relating to the episode. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.